The message lit up my phone screen just after 9 o'clock. I was stirring cream into my coffee, still wearing my robe. The kitchen was quiet except for the soft tick of the wall clock. Caleb's name blinked at me like it always did. Familiar, safe. But what came after it was neither. "Hey, Mom, Maris feels it might be weird if you came to the lake trip. She wants to keep it just family." I stared at it once, twice, 3 times. The words didn't change, but something in me did. I'd just finalized the last payment on their house 2 days ago, wired the money from my retirement savings. No hesitation, no second thoughts. That house was supposed to be their future, my gift. My name wasn't on the deed. That was intentional. I wanted no strings. No power plays, just love. And now, apparently, I wasn't family enough for a rented lake house and a weekend of barbecue and board games. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I typed back one word: understood. Then I set the phone down and let my hands rest against the edge of the counter, bracing myself against the quiet. A wordless echo began moving through me, slow at first, like a distant wind that hadn't reached the trees yet. So this was how it happened. Not with slammed doors or final arguments, but with passive phrases and pretty words. Maris feels, and I won't be joining. Just enough polish to hide the intent, but not enough to dull the blade. I moved slowly to the window, staring out across the street at nothing in particular. Something had shifted. Maybe not in them. Maybe just in me. Because the worst part wasn't what Caleb said. It was how unsurprised I was. It had been almost a year since I handed them the keys. I remember the morning well. Gray sky, dew still clinging to the lawn. Caleb had his arm around Maris, both of them grinning as if they'd earned that moment. I stood beside them on the porch of the Little Craftsman on Willow Bend, smiling through the ache in my chest, holding out the envelope that contained the transfer confirmation. "No more rent?" I said, trying to sound cheerful. "No more waiting." Maris hugged me tight. "You'll always have a room here, promise." I believed her. I had liquidated an investment account my late husband and I had built over decades, our safety net, our slow-growing plan for late-life comfort. After he died, that plan shifted. Caleb was our only child. Helping him build a life felt like the only thing left that made sense. So I gave the house, titled it in their name alone. I told Roland, my lawyer, it's not about control, it's about love. He warned me once to be careful. I brushed it off. That summer, I drove down 3 hours every other weekend to help paint. Maris wanted muted sage in the kitchen and warm gray in the hallway. I rolled each coat slowly, methodically, careful around the corners while she scrolled Pinterest on her phone, and Caleb took conference calls upstairs. When their new curtains arrived, I ironed them. She didn't ask, but they'd come wrinkled from the box, and I wanted the house to feel finished. I canceled a road trip with Joanne to pet sit their dog when they got last-minute concert tickets. They apologized, but not really. Caleb said, "You're so good at handling things, Mom." When Maris slid a stack of papers across the table, "Just some tax forms," she said. I signed durable power of attorney, simplified account access, all in neat lines with sticky tabs for signatures. She even brought the notary. It just makes things easier. And I told myself again and again, this is what family does. This is love. This is being useful, being needed, being close. I didn't see what I was giving away until much later, but I started to feel what I'd lost the first time I showed up and knocked, and no one answered. It happened slowly, like most things that rot. At first I chalked it up to transition. New homeowners, new routines. Maris's rearranged furniture I'd helped place replaced the kitchen rug I bought with one that better fits the palette. I smiled and said nothing. It wasn't my house. That was the point, right? But soon I noticed things that didn't feel like taste. They felt like distance. I stopped being copied on group texts about family dinners. When I asked Maris about Caleb's birthday brunch plans, she blinked. "Oh, didn't we mention it? We kept it small this year. Caleb always texted after, never before. Always a reason. Deadlines, client calls. You know how work gets." On my birthday, I received a card. No gift, no call, just a short message in Caleb's handwriting and a check for $100 folded neatly inside. 2 weeks later, it was returned by mail. "Address not valid" scrolled across the envelope. But it was. It always had been. I didn't ask. I didn't mention it. I held that envelope like a fragile thing, then tucked it into a drawer and never opened it again. Over tea on Joanne's back porch, I told her about it. The canceled brunches, the missed calls, the silence that wasn't quite silent. She stirred her spoon, then looked up. Have you ever checked if your name's still on that deed? The question struck me like a pin through cloth. I hadn't. I didn't even know how. I'm sure it's fine, I said. But as I said it, I felt something shift in my stomach, a dull, turning weight I couldn't ignore. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen, rereading the lake trip message. I clicked open my bank account out of habit, and that's when I noticed the first withdrawal I didn't recognize. I hadn't logged into my accounts in months. There hadn't been a reason to. I wasn't extravagant, and my expenses were predictable. But that night, sitting at the kitchen table with my phone glowing in the dark, something inside me moved past suspicion. It tilted into certainty. I opened my checking account first. At a glance, everything looked ordinary. Grocery bills, utilities, the usual. But buried between those familiar entries were smaller transactions labeled property maintenance, home upgrades, and contractor fees. Most under $500 each, just low enough to avoid notice. None approved by me. When I called the bank the next morning, the representative's tone was courteous but distant. Those transactions were made by your co-user, she said. My co-user? Yes, Emily Gardner. I almost corrected her. Emily wasn't family. Then I realized Maris's full name. Emily Maris Gardner. My heart thudded against my ribs. I hadn't added her to anything. I'd never shared that kind of access. Except I had those forms last spring, the neat folder with sticky tabs. Just for taxis, she'd said. I signed them without reading closely, too eager to be helpful, too afraid of seeming difficult. That afternoon I called Joanne. She didn't ask questions. She simply said, "Come over." By evening, I had a name. Mason Huey. Joanne knew him from her old firm, discreet, methodical, fast. Within days, he had a preliminary report. What he found twisted my stomach into knots. Maris had applied for a second mortgage using the house I'd gifted them as collateral. The documents listed her as full financial agent on my accounts. She'd made payments toward her personal credit card debt using withdrawals from my retirement fund. The transfers were masked under joint household expenses. She's subtle, Mason said, but not clean. Then came the final blow. The plain white envelope slid under my front door the day before they left for the lake trip. Inside were documents typed and organized, ready for my signature. Power of attorney, permanent, irrevocable, financial, medical, full control, wrapped in the language of care for your peace of mind. I sat on the floor, the envelope open beside me, the papers spread like landmines. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't stress. It was a plan, not impulsive, but slow, careful, and quiet. The kind of betrayal that doesn't need yelling. The kind that trusts you'll never open your eyes. But I had, and now that I had, I couldn't look away. The next morning, I dialed Mr. Denton's number. My voice didn't shake. I told his assistant I needed a meeting today if possible. I was done playing the part they had written for me. I was ready to write my own. Joanne drove me to Roland Denton's office that morning, her hands steady on the wheel while mine sat folded in my lap. I didn't speak much, but she didn't push. She knew. It was the kind of silence between women who have buried more than one illusion. Roland had handled my will, my retirement filings, even the title transfer for the house last spring. He looked surprised to see me, but not unkindly. I explained everything without trembling about the withdrawals. The co-user accessed the envelope with power of attorney papers slipped under my door like junk mail. He listened carefully, then nodded once. We'll revoke all current authorizations immediately. Over the next hour, we began the process. Durable power of attorney voided. Joint financial access frozen. Ownership of the house reversal petition filed. A protective clause added to my estate documents. I signed everything calmly, my name flowing onto the lines like I was sealing something sacred shut. While Roland worked the legal angles, Mason continued digging. Each day brought new confirmations. Marius had quietly used my home as leverage to pre-qualify for a private equity loan. She listed herself as the sole property contact. The lender, Mason said, had no idea the original deed came from a gift. And Caleb, my son, my only child, hadn't logged into any joint system in over 6 months. No transfers, no approvals, not even a password reset. He'd handed it all over to her completely. He trusted her, Mason said. No, I replied. He stopped seeing me. I didn't cry. Not then, not later. That night, I stood in the hallway, fingers brushing the edge of the photo frame that held a picture of our first Christmas in their new house. Maris in red, Caleb holding a mug, me standing in the background, always the background. I lifted the frame gently, set it face down in a drawer, and walked into the living room. At the windowsill, my husband's photo rested in its silver frame, just as I'd left it. "They've built this life on me," I whispered to him. "Now I'm removing the foundation." I turned out the lights and stood there for a long time, hands still. By the time the morning came, the first set of documents had been filed. They left for the lake on a Sunday morning, their bags piled high in the back of Caleb's SUV. I saw the photos later. Mary in oversized sunglasses holding a drink on the dock, captioned, "Unplugged and Grateful." While they posted filtered sunsets, I sat across from Roland in his office with the final paperwork in front of me. The house reversal had gone through clean, legal, quiet. He slid a copy across the table and looked at me. "We can hold the title in your name or the trust." "Your call." "The trust," I said. "And seal the fund under a private designation," he nodded. That afternoon, the house was sold in cash to a young couple, first-time buyers relocating from Bend. They were kind, nervous, thrilled. I gave them my blessing and my silence. No forwarding notice, no warning. The funds from the sale landed in the new account 2 days later. It was under a trust name even Caleb wouldn't recognize. My financial footprint was scrubbed clean of them. Every shared access revoked, every door quietly closed. And still I said nothing. The silence was its own language now, no less sharp than words, but infinitely more effective. Midweek, a new envelope appeared in my mailbox. Hand-delivered, no stamp. White clean. Inside, a fresh stack of documents, professionally typed, neatly tabbed. The title page read, "For your peace of mind." Maris's handwriting in blue ink danced across a sticky note. "No rush, just sign when you're ready. This makes everything easier. Power of attorney, irrevocable. Full financial and medical control. All dressed in sweet wording, dressed like love." I read every word. Then I folded the packet closed. I didn't rip it, didn't scream. I placed it back in the envelope and set it on the counter beside the uncashed birthday check. Two things that once might have meant something. Instead, I whispered into the stillness. "You gambled with my trust. Now I'll gamble with your future." The lights in the kitchen cast long shadows as the sun slipped down. The refrigerator hummed. The rest of the house stayed quiet. Let them sip cocktails on the lake and laugh under the moon. Let them think the world they left behind was waiting for them to return. By the time they pulled into the driveway again, the locks would already be changed. They arrived on a bright Saturday morning, just as the moving van pulled into the driveway. I had parked a block away and waited, watched, let the scene unfold. Maris stepped out of the passenger seat first, already barking something toward Caleb as he fumbled with their luggage. Neither of them noticed the young couple standing at the front door until the realtor, keys in hand, waved. I crossed the street slowly, not hurried, not hesitant. Maris turned, saw me, and froze. Caleb looked up from his phone, confused. "What the hell is going on?" Maris asked, her voice already climbing. "Why are there people at our house?" I stopped in front of them and met her eyes. "You were managing what never belonged to you." She blinked momentarily, thrown. Caleb's brow furrowed, then his mouth parted like he might speak, but nothing came. I opened my bag and pulled out 2 thick folders, one dark green and one navy. I handed the green one to Caleb. Deed, transfer, sale confirmation, financial logs, and reversal orders. Everything processed through my attorney and the county office. Maris stepped forward, snatched the folder from his hands, and began flipping through it rapidly, her jaw tightening with each page. "And this," I said, holding out the navy folder, "is yours." She took it, scanned, slowed. Her face shifted, anger curdling into something else. Inside were the investigator's report, copies of every unauthorized withdrawal, screenshots of credit card debt paid with my retirement fund, proof of the second mortgage application, and records of account access made under my name. "You forged legal control," I said, "and used it to bleed me dry." "You can't do this," Maris spat. "You don't have the right. You gave up that argument when you left documents in my mailbox that would have stripped me of medical and financial autonomy while you were off. Drinking by the lake." Caleb was pale now, one hand gripping the edge of the car door. "This won't hold," Maris snapped. We'll sue. We'll take it to court. If you do, I said evenly, that entire folder becomes public record. Every signature you forged, every dollar you siphoned, every plan you made. She opened her mouth again, but I raised a hand. Enough, you gambled. I wouldn't look, you gambled. I wouldn't fight. Caleb finally spoke, his voice trembling. We didn't mean to hurt you. I looked at him, not the man, but the echo of the boy I'd once known. You didn't mean to get caught. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Maris stepped forward, voice shaking. You'll regret this. I regret trusting you, I said. Everything else I'm at peace with. Behind them, the new owners waved toward the realtor. The front door opened wide. Their door now? You should go, I said. They didn't move right away. Maris looked like she might say more, but Caleb touched her arm. She flinched, then backed away. They walked to the car, slowly folding into the seats with the weight of something crumbling. I stood there until the car pulled away. Then I turned, walked back to my own car, and drove home. That night, I found the envelope Maris had left and burned it in the sink, one page at a time. The apartment was smaller than what I was used to, but it felt bigger somehow. No granite counters, no walk-in closets, just enough space for a woman who no longer needed to make room for anyone else. I moved in 2 weeks after the sale was final. Joanne brought over muffins on my first morning and helped unpack the dishes. We didn't talk about the house. She didn't ask, and I didn't offer. The silence I once feared had taken on a different texture. It was no longer the silence of exclusion. It was the kind that wraps around you like a soft coat. I sat in it, breathed in it, let it settle. Caleb texted the day after they returned from the lake. Mom, please. We didn't plan it this way. I read it once, then set the phone down. 3 days later, I just want to explain. Can we talk? There was nothing left to explain. I didn't delete the messages. I didn't respond. I simply stopped carrying the phone from room to room. Instead, I planted herbs in ceramic pots along the balcony. Mint, thyme, basil. I joined a book club at the library 2 blocks over. I fed birds in the park on Sundays, carrying crumbs in my coat pocket like my grandmother used to. Nobody expected anything from me. Nobody asked me to sign things or explain myself. I met people who only knew me as Eleanor, not Caleb's mom or Maris's mother-in-law. They asked what I liked to read, not what I could do for them. One evening, I stood on the balcony watering the rosemary and realized I was breathing differently. Not shallow, not cautious. My chest lifted and fell without ache. That was the first time I understood what it meant to reclaim your life. Not with noise or fire, but with absolute quiet. The phone buzzed once on the counter. I didn't look. Instead, I walked back inside and began to plan what I would cook for myself that night. They never wanted me gone. They wanted control, but I was never theirs to manage. All those years, I thought I was building something for them. Stability, comfort, legacy. I see now I was building an illusion. One that worked as long as I stayed quiet, as long as I kept giving. But being needed isn't being loved. It's being used. And I let it happen because I believed it made me essential. Because I thought usefulness was the same as belonging. It isn't. And silence isn't weakness. It's a blade when you learn how to hold it right. It protects what shouting can't reach. It shields dignity. It closes doors with grace. They thought I would crumble without them. That my strength was tied to their approval. But the truth is, I've never stood taller than I do now, alone in this quiet. They took the house, the money, the trust. What they never took, what they never could, was the part of me that remembers who I was before I became theirs. Have you ever confused being needed with being valued? If someone built their life on your kindness, would you let them or take it back before it's too late?